We are now ready to begin our final model, Model 7. Model 7 is Ionic Solutions. So we're going to be mixing ionic solutions together and making observations. When we mix two ionic compounds together, we're doing a special type of reaction called a double displacement reaction. So we've previously seen single displacement reactions in which a more active metal displaces either a hydrogen ion or another metal ion that it is more active than, and therefore you form a new compound, a new ionic compound based on that single displacement. So now with these ionic solutions reactions, which we call double displacement reactions, we're forming two new ionic compounds. And basically what's happening is the metal ions for each of these ionic compounds are going to switch positions, and therefore they'll have new non-metal anion partners, and therefore they'll be forming new ionic compounds. And so for the first set of reactions, we're going to do 3, and we're going to do 2 sets of 3 reactions. So the first 3 reactions is going to involve 3 ionic compounds that are nitrates. So for the first test tube, we're going to put in 1 milliliter of silver nitrate, which we've used in a previous model. The second test tube, we're going to put about 1 milliliter of lead nitrate. And then the third test tube, we're going to put 1 milliliter of aluminum nitrate. So first test tube, 1 milliliter of AgNO3, silver nitrate. Second test tube, 1 milliliter of PbNO3, that's lead nitrate. And the third test tube, 1 milliliter of AlNO3, which is aluminum nitrate. So let's put in the 20 drops, which is about 1 ml of each of those 3, into 3 separate test tubes. So we've got 20 drops of the silver nitrate in the first test tube. Then we're going to put 20 drops of the lead nitrate in the second test tube. And then finally 20 drops of aluminum nitrate in the third test tube. Notice that the silver nitrate is colorless. The lead nitrate has a pale yellow color. If we put a piece of white paper behind, we can see the pale yellow color. So the lead nitrate has a pale yellow color. The aluminum nitrate is also colorless. Now what we're going to add to these 3 test tubes is 1 milliliter of potassium iodide, which has the formula Ki. So add the 20 drops of Ki to the silver nitrate. And it goes from colorless to yellow. And we see lots of solid white in the bottom of the test tube. So we see yellow liquid on top, and we see a yellowish, whitish, solid substance at the bottom of the test tube. So this is the reaction of silver nitrate plus potassium iodide, Ki. A yellow solution and a white solid precipitate. So the solid substance at the bottom is called a precipitate. So therefore, this is a special class of double displacement reactions called precipitation reactions. Now let's see what the potassium iodide does when we add it to the lead nitrate. So again, this is our potassium iodide. We're going to add a milliliter of it to the lead nitrate. So the lead nitrate started out a faint yellow color. Now it's a bright yellow color. And also noticing that there's also bright yellow liquid on top and a yellowish white precipitate on the bottom. Finally, we'll add the potassium iodide to the aluminum nitrate solution. The aluminum nitrate starts out colorless. We're going to add 1 milliliter of potassium iodide to it. So the aluminum nitrate plus the potassium iodide, it remains colorless. There's no solid precipitate at the bottom of the tube either. So it remains a colorless solution. No solid precipitate. So we've observed the reaction of colorless silver nitrate with potassium iodide. We formed a pale yellow solution with a white precipitate. Pale yellow lead nitrate was reacted with the pale yellow potassium iodide. Notice the potassium iodide itself has a pale yellow color. And what we got was this very, very bright yellow liquid and a faint yellow to white precipitate at the bottom of the test tube. However, the aluminum nitrate reacting with the potassium iodide, the solution started out for the aluminum nitrate colorless, and it remained colorless with no precipitate. So now we're going to repeat the process of adding the same 3 nitrates to 3 clean separate test tubes. Silver nitrate in the first one, lead nitrate in the second one, aluminum nitrate in the third test tube. Again, we're going to add about 1 ml of each of those 3 nitrates to those 3 separate test tubes. But instead of adding potassium iodide to those this time, we're going to now add a different reactant to them called sodium phosphate. Sodium phosphate, 0.1 molar, has the formula Na3PO4. So again, 1 ml of each of the nitrates to 3 separate test tubes. And again, the silver nitrate starts out colorless. The lead nitrate has a pale yellow color. I'm going to add 1 milliliter of it. And the aluminum nitrate, again, starts out colorless. We'll add a milliliter of it to the third test tube. And so now we're going to add the sodium phosphate, Na3PO4, to the silver nitrate. And we see it turns from colorless to yellow. And there's a yellow solid precipitate forming at the bottom. So we've got our yellow liquid on top and a solid yellow precipitate at the bottom when we combine the sodium phosphate with the silver nitrate. Now we're going to add the sodium phosphate to the lead nitrate. Lead nitrate starts off colorless. And that turns to a nice white color, nice milky white color. And we've got a white solid precipitate. Now finally, let's add the sodium phosphate to the aluminum nitrate. Starts off colorless. Add the sodium phosphate. And we've got a cloudy solution. It's a white cloudy solution. But there is no solid precipitate at the bottom. We just get a cloudy solution, but no solid precipitate at the bottom. So now that we've observed all three of these nitrates reacting with first the Ki, potassium iodide, and then secondly with the sodium phosphate, now we are ready to answer the critical thinking questions. You should have been basically filling out the data table with your observations for each of the two sets of reactions. And then answer these critical thinking questions on your data sheet, numbers 1 and 2. And that brings us to the end of the different models. Go into your individual meeting rooms and complete your data tables and your question number 2 for model 7, and then return to the general room where we will answer any final questions that you may have and wrap up the lab for the day.